Good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Burnside Council. Please stand for the acknowledgements. We acknowledge that the land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to the Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting or attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who gave their lives for this country and its people. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all those who reside, study, work in and visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Please be seated. I welcome members in the gallery and ask them to observe in respectful silence as the Chamber deliberates on matters that relate to the City of Burnside. Should there be a fire or any other emergency, an alarm will sound and you'll be asked to follow directions of Council staff. I need to remind all that Council meetings are live streamed through the City of Burnside website, and a copy of tonight's agenda is available by downloading from that website. I remind elected members of the importance of using their microphones appropriately so that those at home can hear clearly, and please turn off your mobile phones or put them onto silent for the time of the meeting. Thank you. We have no apologies. We have no leave of absences. I'm looking for someone to move the confirmation of minutes. Thank you, Councillor Dawes. Moved. Councillor Davis seconded. Those in favour? Carried. We have one deputation from Mr Jason Mayolo. If you'd like to come forward to the table there, Mr Mayolo, and just state your name and your suburb and what you're here to talk to us about tonight. And then you have 5 minutes with a warning bell at 4 minutes. And then if anyone has any questions, they may wish to ask you after you've finished. Thank you.
Is that working now? Perfect. All right, yes. So my name is Jason Mayolo. I'm from College Park. I am here representing my grandmother, Mrs Eugenia Maroulis, who is present with us today. So firstly, I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to speak on behalf of my grandmother. She has lived in the suburb of Eastwood since 1975. We're here in relation to the proposed closure of the lane near Matilda Street in Eastwood. My grandmother has been an eyewitness to the lane being clear and free and then becoming encroached upon by abutting landowners over the years since 1975. And she's also been a witness to the objections that have been made to council by her son-in-law, Mr Cosimo Mayolo, since the 1990s. And more recently since 2012, when a carport was erected across the public road by the resident at number 13 of Matilda Street. In June of 2014, the council agenda notes that the position of the administration was to oblige the encroaching landowners to remove their encroachments. However, after 2 years of inaction, they were still in place and hadn't actually increased, which resulted in my grandmother, Mrs Maroulis, subsequently writing to the Office of the Mayor in 2016 requesting that the encroachments be removed from the public road, as the intent was for her to move into the abutting outbuilding of property of number 1 Matilda Street, which is owned by her son-in-law, due to her wanting to, live closer to her family and be able to receive extra care in that capacity. Moving forward then to 2017, she wrote again to the council and completed, in fact, a petition with 49 signatures on it and presented that to council in 2017. And now we're here before you today in 2019. She is 96 years old and she feels that her right to live where she wants to live in Eastwood, in the City of Burnside, is being denied by council because of council considering the closure of the public road in question. So it is her belief that it is wrong to close the road and benefit those who have illegally encroached upon it, and thereby disadvantage Mrs. Maroulis, who is an elderly and law-abiding citizen. As you can appreciate, she does require some increase in care due to her years, and she has a very strong desire to continue to live as independently as she can. And as I'm sure people who have elderly people in their families as well can appreciate, is trying to keep that independence, trying to keep people involved in the community, not necessarily farming them off to residential care, putting them outside of the communities, keeping them there where they feel like they belong. And that's something that she obviously feels quite strongly about and would like to implore that you do as well. So the proposed building at the rear of number 1 Matilda Street, it's proposed to be a granny flat for her to be able to live in. It's her son-in-law has fought quite hard in order to receive the development and building approval for that structure to be converted into that, and this will facilitate her being able to maintain her independence and obviously receive some additional care by the proximity to her family, and also to maintain her independence because it's a separate dwelling with public road access. So the only thing preventing that is really the encroachments that are currently on the road. So it has received approval. It can be imminent for construction, but there's no point if she cannot access her property from the lane. She is mobility impaired and she is a high falls risk, so the intent also is for her to have her independence, so carers, friends or family can visit her without having to go through the main dwelling. In order to access it, if the road were to be closed, it does cut her off in the fact that she would have to go through the main dwelling and access 4 separate doors to get inside the property, and then up several steps and then back outside the property again. So you're increasing all of this, which is denying the independence and denying the whole purpose of her relocating to that location. So do you want to essentially say that she wants to have the right to live there close to her family so they can support her, and also maintain that independence so she's not isolated and technically stuck in the same building behind 4 different doors. So I believe my time is up and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone who wishes to ask a question? Councillor Piggott.
Yes. Actually, I don't have a question. I just want to thank you for coming in and speaking on behalf of your grandmother so well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayolo.
Thank you.
We have no petitions. Yes. The matter will be, sorry, Mr. Mayolo, so that you are aware that that matter will be considered in confidence later on this evening. Right? Thank you. Sorry, do I have to turn this off as well? Does it matter? Yes. Thank you. Thanks for doing that.
May I ask when the result may be known from that?
Depends on council.
Everything depends on what happens later on tonight. Okay. All right. We have no petitions. And is there anyone who wishes to ask a question of public question time? We will move on. There are questions on notice. The answers of those questions on notice have been placed on tables or on seats in the gallery. And we'll move to motions on notice. The first one is 10.1, Blue Heritage Plaque Scheme. Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, good evening, members. I draw your attention to this motion. I wish to move that the administration provide a report to Council detailing the cost, benefits, risks and opportunities of a heritage plaque scheme to contribute to the strategic outcome of the protection and promotion of built heritage in the city of Burnside. That the report, including, if we can just edit that sentence, add 2 words please, that the report include a draft policy and be provided after finalisation of the Your Neighbourhood Budget voting results in December 2019 and the inaugural meeting of the Heritage Reference Group. Thank you. So this motion aligns with Strategic Direction 1, our integrated urban form and living spaces. It's our first strategic direction about historic character. Our strategic direction is to embrace our city's character and heritage, to ensure our continued pride in and enjoyment of living in Burnside. Strategic Direction 1 is historic character. And how we go about this in our strategy is to support the protection of our heritage, character-built heritage and natural heritage, and to undertake initiatives by Council to assist residents. And I have here in my hand what residents, thank you, and on the screen have developed in conjunction with the administration, heritage officers. It is a plaque which I'll hand around to the chamber now. It's a plaque that reads to Realtor. It reads a post-Federation bungalow, lot 13, 19 Giles Street. It talks about the architect, the builder, Mr. Matthews, the cost, when it was built, 1912. There are over 1,500 of these homes in the city of Burnside. We happen to have the gems of the city of Adelaide's gems contributory items. There's 1,500 of them. We have the greatest concentration of them. And I'm so proud to speak for the residents who have been the leaders in this initiative to develop this plaque, the first of its kind, that's been installed just in the last week. And we do hope we can together decide tonight to develop a scheme so more residents can do the same. We need a scheme, a policy, so we have consistency. Please support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Hubel, you wish to second?
I do. Your Honour? Your Worship, sorry. Called you Your Honour again. Mayor, thank you. Yes, I would like to second this. I think heritage is incredibly important to our council area, and I think these sorts of things, plaques make things a lot more visible. I think they, in themselves, add to the character of a community, and I think it would be good to have them in Burnside. So I support investigating this line.
Those against? It's carried. Oh, now I've got to put the motion, sorry. Put the motion that is, this motion that's before us. Who's in approval? Yeah, we know, everyone's in consent. Those against? No, sorry, I need those four, please. Those for the motion? Those against the motion? Carried. Right, now we move to 10.2, access to confidential information. Member Councillor Cornish.
I should put my microphone on, I apologise. I move this motion. Basically, it came up during our CEO recruitment and elected members having some access to some confidential information, and there was a lot of toing and froing about access to that, and I thought at the time that we needed some governance work to get it reviewed in how elected members can access confidential information here. So I sat down with the elected body, or the administration, sorry, and found out that they're actually currently going to start a review of the elected members' policy there. So perhaps they can make some inclusion in that about what's the best best practice for elected members to access confidential information rather than, one computer, password protected, someone has to be in the room, all these weird things that we have to go through that no other council has to go through. So I just put that up to get reviewed, and I hope you support it.
Yeah. I'll second that. I think it's an excellent idea, especially for people who are providing information in the City of Burnside. They also need to be a bit aware of what we can access, and so everything's on the table, so I support it.
Don't have anyone else on the screen, so can I put the motion? Right, those in favour? Those against? Move to 13.3, Councillor Davis.
In my view, our current Code of Conduct procedures are long and difficult and very expensive the way that it's set up. For example, one of the first things that you do is that you'll have an officer, if there's a Code of Conduct, it'll go for a preliminary report, and that person needs to actually come back with a finding, and then they tell the council to go into a further investigation. So there are actually circumstances where it's not needed to go to that second stage. And secondly, there's a massive problem with the way that our entire code is written, in that if you have a Code 2 breach, there can actually be legislative breaches as well. And the thing is that everybody here actually has reporting obligations. If there's a Part 3 breach of the code, you have to report it to the Ombudsman, for big or small or whatever it is. And I think that that's part of the reason why the Ombudsman is so overwhelmed with these things, and his office is so overwhelmed, because every single breach of the Act suddenly gets put to the Ombudsman. I would like us, we had an LGA representative come and talk to us about codes of conduct and different changes that we can make to the Act. And we had a brief discussion, and I do have some ideas of how we can change it. We were obviously very familiar with codes of conduct over the last 4 years in the last term of office, and I had some thoughts about how we can simplify it, and I'd like to speak to the members here. I think you've all seen some of the strangeness where the preliminary report comes back with a finding essentially, and there's double the work that gets handed on, and so there should be circuit breakers along the way to skip those things for very obvious breaches or more complex things where it needs to go to that further level. So that's what I'd like to discuss, and that's why I'd like to have a workshop so that we as a council can consider how we could consider streamlining our code of conduct, and maybe look at some other councils and how they do it interstate to make this a cheaper process.
I need a seconder.
I'm happy to second the motion, and I do not wish to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. No one else on the screen wishing to speak? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Is Councillor Lemon, acknowledgements, 10.4.
Thank you. I'll be brief too, and in being brief, what I'll do is read out the motion, because the motion is self-explanatory. With regard to the recent public announcement of Mr Chris Cowley as the new CEO of Burnside Council, I would like Council to acknowledge and thank Mr Barry Cant for his professionalism and dedication to the City of Burnside in his capacity as acting CEO since June 2019. That's now been 6 months. Further, the head of the organisation doesn't do these things by themselves. Further, I would also like Council to acknowledge and thank Mr Martin Cooper for his professionalism and dedication for acting as CEO during July 2019 and for his past acting as CEO. Again, the two at the top don't do it by themselves. I'd like Council to thank the senior managers of the City of Burnside for their excellent work in covering the vacant positions, because it has been a bit of a shuffle as positions are made vacant with these two acting as CEO, and everybody has performed in such an exemplary fashion. So finally, number 4, that Council thank all staff for the high standard of work that we've actually seen in the last 6 months during this transition period. I think that this is timely at the end of the year to thank. For half the year, this council has been running superbly in very difficult situation, and I think that it's a testament to the professionalism of all staff in this council that we thank them for their work on our behalf.
Councillor Hubel, you wish to second?
Yes, hear.
Councillor Davis, you wish to speak?
Yes, I would. I think this is quite an important motion for Council tonight to thank the efforts of our leadership team. I think that in the City of Burnside, we have a really, really strong team, and we have had one for quite some time, and we have had two very strong pillars in our organisation, being Mr. Barry Cant and Mr. Martin Cooper, who have a huge amount of knowledge and inspire leadership, I know, in their team. And I think that Barry's stepping up to CEO. I think he's done an absolutely wonderful job. He has certainly not been a placeholder, and I've seen him drive this organisation from strength to strength, and just by the way that even the staff come in, and that his support for them and their support for him is encouraging to see. And in terms of the quality of the work, you know, I've had the opportunity to actually go and read the quality of the work that comes out of some other councils and other even departments, and you sometimes look at it and go, how can I possibly make a decision based off of the information that's been provided to me? And as a councillor, I have always felt incredibly empowered that I have all the facts that I need to make a decision. And if I do have any more questions, the administration is so quick to come back with a response, and it's been so incredibly supportive of me as a councillor, and I'm sure of the rest of council. So I'd like to thank Barry in particular, and also to Martin for their support, and I think Alan's done an excellent job as well, sitting in that role as well for the time period. So congratulations, and I look forward to many more years ahead.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I endorse all the comments that have already been made, and I personally would like to thank Barry Cant for his stewardship of the council, particularly in the last 6 months, and all of his work before that, through a very tumultuous time. It has really been quite a challenging time. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Martin Cooper for the acting role he has, acting CEO role he has taken on, and steered again the council through a time of great difficulty. And then also working as an executive team. I think it's been a hallmark that there's been great collaboration and support and cooperation with you two as the executive, and then all your senior management team. So I think through a particularly difficult time, along with a new council and a whole new group of new councillors, you have done a particularly good job, and I'm really pleased that we're formally commending that. I'd also like to thank all of the general managers and group managers who've stepped up and acted. Michelle Kennedy's done a great job acting in her role, and as have all the others. So thank you very much.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, yes, acknowledge that the leadership on the asset management plan by Michelle Kennedy, quite intense this year, and the whole team in that regard, because that's something this organisation's had to do in quite a short time frame. Thank you.
Right, no one else on the screen. Is anyone, sorry, I will move the motion. Sorry, second, you have the opportunity to speak again, Councillor Lemon, sorry.
I just thought of something else to say, so
Okay.
from now on it'll be Barry Can.
Right, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Streetscapes, number 10.5, Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. My motion tonight reads, I've got a slight amendment to be made, that a report be brought to the January 2020 council meeting, which outlines, through promotion in the Focus magazine, and an addition there, a column in the Focus on Burnside Messenger, sorry if I put my glasses, so a column in the Focus on Burnside Messenger article on the website, and with an insert in the next rates notice, how the community can assist council with support, maintenance and watering of street trees, verges and general tidiness of their streetscapes. I've moved this motion.
Sorry, Councillor Davey, did you want general in front of tidiness? You said the word, but it's not there.
Oh yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And general tidiness of their streetscapes. Yes, thank you. That covers everything. I've moved this motion so that we can appeal to and clarify to our community what ways they can work together with their council, in support of their council, to help maintain their streetscapes, especially as we experience the effects of climate change. Whether it's giving extra water to baby street trees, watering established ones in hot weather, sweeping up leaves into piles for the autumn collection, or after there's been a big blow and the streets are full of leaves and those little, what are those trees? Melia tree fruit. All of those sort of activities, maintaining our nature strips. All of this work helps the council staff to care for our beautiful environment that we all value so highly. One of the other aims of this activity is that it also helps streets with new residents get to know their neighbours and helps them integrate into the community. It also helps with our environmental responsibilities if we can keep the leaf litter load from being washed into the creeks, rivers and then into the sea, by us helping to remove the leaves into our green bin system for our recycling and assist our recycling program. We have several ways we can promote community participation in maintaining our environment: through our website, with inserts in our rates notices for those who have them posted, through articles in our quarterly Focus magazine, and by a regular column in the Focus on Burnside in the Messenger. I'd actually like to see us have a more environmental support focus in that column. So it's simply to ask for a report in the new year to outline the best ways that Council can provide this leadership to help us all preserve and maintain our streets, and also to get to know each other better as we experience the effect of climate change. So I hope you'll support this.
I need a seconder, please. Councillor Turnbull.
Can I speak to it? Thank you, Mayor. It's an excellent motion and I'll definitely support it. There are many residents who already water young street trees and help to maintain the council verges. Any increased participation by residents in caring for the verges adjacent to their properties will have to have a positive impact. I particularly refer to the watering of the young street trees, and I refer to my question on notice of the previous council meeting, which was actually done again this time. In this, I noted the loss of some 35% of newly planted street trees in my area, and this was by the end of October. I thank the staff for the response, which provided details of the care measures currently in place. However, there was one aspect of my question that wasn't addressed, namely, what further steps can be taken by Council to ensure a better survival rate for newly planted trees? Councillor Davies' motion will help to address this question. Now that Burnside Council has declared a climate change emergency, and as we've just experienced record bushfires nationally before even the onset of summer, it's clear that new measures are going to be required to address these issues. So Councillor Davies' motion is a positive step in engaging residents, and I ask you to support it. Thank you.
Councillor Carbine.
Thank you, Worship. Tiniest of amendments, and I'm assuming the mover and seconder will take it on board, but could we please include social media into the motion? It's always forgotten about.
Both the mover and the seconder are willing to accept the inclusion of social media on the website, perhaps in social media and with an insert. Might be a good location for that to be added. Does that meet with your approval, mover and seconder? Okay. Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a question for the administration, Mayor. Could this report also include measures to protect new plantings from vandalism? I've noticed there's some vandalism of trees in the city of Burnside, and I know that other councils have experienced this over time.
Through the Mayor, we currently do have a string of things that we can do to help that. Okay. One of the things we do in the first instance is to notify the local area of vandalism by a notice which asks for support, any information that can be given, highlights the problem, hopefully to a point where it doesn't happen again. Where there's persistent vandalism of a tree, we will go to the lengths of encasing that tree, so putting up a protective barrier around that tree to allow that to grow. We do that in the most extreme circumstances because of the cost of doing that, but also it also makes it quite difficult to maintain that tree moving forward. But we do have those things in place, but of course we can mention those in the report as well.
Thank you.
Do you wish to have anything included in the motion in relation to that? You'll just take it on notice. Okay, thank you. Councillor Hughes.
I was just going to ask whether, and I'm not sure whether this was the intent of the mover, but perhaps could be addressed in closing remarks. We had a workshop a while ago around like Tree Week and some of the initiatives that were being run, and whether any of those, I guess, related to verge trees, whether that would also be included in the report, or would that be covered in a separate report on Tree Week? Would the... Okay, sorry.
Through the Mayor, that will be coming back to Council to review as part of the next iteration of the Canopy Action Plan. That'll be early in the new year. Well, that will talk specifically, hopefully, about that particular measure and action. In terms of how it relates to street trees and verges, it does relate to that. It also relates to private trees and the whole gambit of open space as well. So we can refer to that in that report, but the main bulk of that conversation would be through the Canopy Action Plan update.
Councillor Henchy, did you have another question?
Yes, another quick question, please. The community, this motion refers to the community, and my question is, does that community also involve the developers? Because we have a lot of developers in the community. And in relation to the developers' impact on street trees, which we've had some of.
Through the Mayor, yes, they're all stakeholders in the maintenance and upkeep of our trees, and yeah, they would be part of that conversation, and the information provided would be accessible to them too.
Right, I don't have anyone else on here, so it's going back to Councillor Davey.
Thank you. I'll just briefly address a couple of issues. I thank Councillor Henschke for her concern about vandalism, and I actually believe that this support will help, that this approach will help with greater community ownership and focus in the streets. I think that will deter vandalism. But the main thing that I want to see is for the new people who are coming into our community who mightn't know how in the past Burnside residents have all chipped in and helped their streetscapes. It's been a great characteristic of Burnside in the past, which has lapsed, I think, due to people having very busy lives, and because there are some new different cultures perhaps in our now who live here, who think that the council administers all of that and doesn't need any help. So I think with some gentle encouragement and persuasion and a bit of groupthink and community, I think we can all help water our trees, improve our street tree canopy, and help with the greening of Burnside. So I see this as a positive, and I hope you'll support it.
Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Questions without notice?
Yep.
Councillor David?
Yeah, I actually had a follow-on question from Councillor Henschke's questions from the 26th of November. I've had a large increase of numbers of residents saying that they didn't get their dog registration forms, and it says that it's gone from about 5,000 to 50,000 in revenue collected from that. I was just wondering, does the administration have any understanding of why there's been a tenfold increase in compliance? And is there potentially a problem with the system?
Mr. Heinrich and Mr. Sorry.
Uselak.
Okay. Oh, Dimitar. I now know a face to a name.
Through the Mayor, thank you for the question. This year is the second year that DACO has been sending out dog renewals. Since the beginning of dog renewals of some 100 years ago, up until last year, council sent out renewal notices, collected revenue, and then gave a percentage to DACO, well, the Dog and Cat Management Board. Last year was the first year that this was reversed. So DACO sent out registration forms and collected the revenue and gave councils their share of the revenue, being 76%. Being the first year last year, we took more of an educative approach to dog renewals rather than expiating in the first year, whereas this year we have been sending reminders and following up with expiations, which will explain the fairly marked increase in enforcement this particular year compared to last.
Right, so potentially what you're saying is that in the first year that it was introduced, the number of expiations issued could have been as high as it was this year, but you chose not to issue the expiations to give capacity on board, and now you're issuing the expiation notes if they haven't come on board.
That's correct.
Right.
What's added to the confusion, I guess, to some people in the community is there are different ways to receive the renewals from DACO in the first place. In the first year, all renewals were sent out by post, because DACO at that time didn't have other forms of information. During the renewal period in that first year, people were able to change the way in which they received renewals in the first place from DACO, from post to either email or text. And I think there have been a number of instances where people have forgotten that, received emails that they ignored, forgot, and it's just become a little bit more of a robust process compared to the old standard way of getting a letter in the post every year. So there's a little bit of the community not just starting to adapt to that. And what we will do next year is reflect on some of the learnings from this year and look at the way we can increase our, even though it's not our role, but increase our role in advertising the renewal period and communicating with our community.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hughes, you have a question?
Oh no, I'll leave it and take it out.
I have one.
Councillor Turnbull?
My question is, when will the Heritage Reference Group be up and running?
Through the Mayor. The first meeting is scheduled to be sometime in December, once we finalise the application and nomination processes that have occurred.
Thank you. Motions without notice? I haven't received any forewarning for any, so we'll move to reports of officers, and I'll run through these, and we'll withdraw them for debate or debate them or go straight to motions on them at the time. So first of all, Ranger Services Review. Anyone wishes to withdraw that? Councillor Hubel. Policy Review, Road and Traffic Management, Carbone. Independent Board Member, BRSI. We have to withdraw that one anyway. Turnbull. Appointment of elected members to the CAP. We have to withdraw that one as well. So, Councillor Davis? Sorry? Oh yeah, well, I'm looking for other names. And for the Delegates, Council Subsidiaries and Audit Committee. Right, Councillor Davis again then. Emergency Management Policy, new policy, 13.6. Straight through, so do we have a mover? Councillor Davis, seconded by, if you use your buttons here, that'll make it easier for me to see who gets first. So it's Councillor Hughes has moved and Councillor Davis is second. No debate, so those in favour, those against, carried. Policy Reviews, Caretaker Information, Informal Gatherings Policy.
I'll move it.
Councillor Davis is moving, Councillor Hughes seconding. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Review of parking restrictions in Rose Park and Dulwich. It's only a holding report. Councillor Cornish, seconded by Councillor Hughes. Thank you. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 13.9, yeah, I'm not touch wood or not say anything. 13.9, street tree removals. Councillor Cornish.
Happy to move.
Seconded Councillor Lemon. Those in favour? Those against, carried. River Torrens Governance Review. No one, so Councillor Councillor Lemon, you'll move it. Councillor Davis seconded. All those in favour? Carried. Revised asset management plans, post-consultation. I'd be surprised if no one, you'd like to withdraw it, Councillor Henschke? First one, which is for 13.1, page 23, and that is Councillor Hubel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I really just had a question. I'll speak to it first. First of all, you need to move that the report be received. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me get my agenda. Sorry.
Or you don't want it received,
I do. Excuse me. If you bear with me. Yes, I'd like to move the report be received and that the council, I'm good now. That council approve an increase to the current full-time equivalent cap by a 2.0 and these 2 additional FTEs be dedicated to resourcing and providing ranger services. Look, I liked reading this report, particularly talking about the continuity of service provisions. I think the rangers for many residents are the face of the city of Burnside, and the thought and consideration that's gone into this trial and subsequently us adopting the permanent move is wonderful. I think the rangers play a great role. I did have one question, I guess, Magnus, for you, and it's a bit out of left field, so I apologise, but I was curious about the additional noise and litter control functions, about how, you know, the ranger department is kind of managing that. Is that something that we've got under control, these new responsibilities? How's that all going?
Through the chair, it's going well. So it's not just ranger services that will perform that function, so it's a function that can be performed either by ranger services or by a development compliance team, depending on whether it's during the day or after hours. The ranger services, particularly in the after hours component, can be adaptable to whatever the needs are at the particular time, whether that be litter, whether that be monitoring a licensed premises, for example, and the impacts from that, noise and the like. So it's an adaptable service.
Great. That's all.
Just point out, of course, that those services have been additional ones have been passed on to us by the state government, unfortunately, which is a contentious issue anyway. Councillor Davis.
Find out what this button does. Yes, support the motion. I think getting rid of temp agencies is always a valuable thing in organisations. I've seen in other organisations where essentially they have, 3% of temp agencies, and thank you, Barry. It's highly costly, and so if we can do it more efficiently, especially those after hours, I know at some of the CFS gates of something we've been talking about strongly. If we can service those areas better, I think it'll make a massive impact to residents and keep us safer. So it's a really good idea.
I don't have anyone else on the screen, so I'll go back to Councillor Hubel. Councillor Henschke.
Mayor, through the Mayor, I wish to put a motion that we leave this on the table until the new CEO starts his role, because we're talking about an increase in FTEs, and I would like the new CEO to... Yeah.
First of all, I need a seconder before the motion is put. Is there anyone who wishes to second that motion? Then it lapses without a seconder, so we now continue with the debate and it goes back to Councillor Hubel to sum up. No, nothing else to add, so now I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Next motion is Councillor Carbone, Policy Review, Road and Traffic Management Policy. Thank you, Mr Heinrich and Mr Uselet. Nice to be able to put a name to a face, or a face to a name now. I've contacted you on many occasions. And now we have Mr Hayes to join us. I'm doing this because for people at home who only see the back of your heads anyway, it is actually really nice to know who we are talking to. So that's the reason that I'm saying who is sitting in those seats. So. Welcome, David. Okay, so we've got Councillor Carbone wishes to speak.
Yes, thank you, Worship. I move that the report be received, that Council adopt the revised road and traffic management policy, subject to one minor change.
Sorry, did you mean this subject to the change being placed in the motion, or is the change somewhere else in the document?
Subject to 6.37.1, changing from 30 metres to 22 metres.
Have a page number on that one, please, Councillor Carbone. Sorry? 54, page 54.
Isn't that 42? Page 42.
Sorry, it's not 3.7, it's 37. 6.37.
6.37.1.
Yep.
Okay. On properties with frontage greater than 30 metres, and you wish to change that to 22
metres.
Maybe we could put in front of the 30 metres, changing from properties with a frontage greater than 30 metres, so it makes a bit more sense.
Okay. I thought...
Are you okay with just me adding that a bit in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything that further clarifies it is a good thing, so...
Well, I think for anyone who's reading it afterwards, yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right.
And look, just in speaking to that, this is something that has popped up in the last 6 months on 2 occasions from residents contacting me, and perhaps others have contacted other elected members, but I know this is probably a bit of a first world problem, but I can see more people in this council wanting to put in U-shaped driveways. But the rule around having a width of 30 metres or more, the chances of someone having a block of that size is becoming rarer and rarer, especially given that 30-metre blocks can be subdivided into 2, making them 2 blocks of 15 metres each. So therefore, the chances of someone having a 30-metre block in the future, well now, and certainly moving into the future, is going to become very hard to come by. And U-shaped driveways, look, I like them. Obviously, residents who have them like them. They do add a level of prestige and so forth. It's all the things that we stand for in Burnside. It does add to the aesthetics of the property. It does have a sense of grandeur and so forth. It does create a more safer exit from the property. Yes, I know you're allowed to have them on main roads, but even if you are on a side street, it does make it safer to exit from the property because you're facing the right way. And of course, if you are allowed to subdivide that block and have 2 driveways, well, why can't they have 2 driveways anyway? The arguments against this, from what I've heard from staff, is essentially 2 things, and I'll address them now. So number one is that the argument against the move is that it does reduce the amount of car parks in the street. All I would say to that is if they're allowed to subdivide, okay, the problem remains the same. But if it's one block, so one house with a U-shaped driveway, chances are most of the cars, most of the visitors will be in the U-shaped driveway or off-street anyway. So I don't really buy that argument that there's going to be less car parks in the street. The second argument that against such a move is that it does impact on the number of trees on the verge. Again, I'll go back to the argument that, well, if this person's allowed to subdivide, okay, by us encouraging them to keep the same property, they're going to punch well above their weight in terms of number of trees on their own private land anyway. So again, that's something I don't buy. So, in summary, it's going to be a big issue moving forward. There are going to be fewer and fewer people who are going to have a block of this size. 30-metre width is very big. Normally, for those who don't know, it's around about 18 metres. That's standard. So this is almost twice. So these are the big properties you see on Watuna Terrace and so forth. But there are a lot of people who have big blocks of land, not Watuna Terrace big, but still quite big, 22 metres wide, and I think they should be allowed to have a U-shaped driveway now and more so moving into the future.
Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to second this motion as it stands? No? It lapses for failure of a seconder, Councillor Carbone. So we now need a new motion. Councillor Davey, you have a new one?
Pressed? I move that the report be received, and 2, that Council release the revised road traffic and management policy for a period of community engagement and consultation, and return an amended report to Council in 2020. Thank you for this revised policy. But as we're all aware, traffic management is one of our greatest challenges in Burnside. I don't need to tell you gentlemen that, or any of my colleagues, as it's very important for our residential and business amenity in Burnside, and it can be quite controversial. I believe we can't finalise this revised policy and endorse it unless and until we hear the views of our community. So therefore, it would benefit from a release for public comment, consideration and for endorsement of any feedback. We actually heard a deputation to the last meeting of Council requesting this very issue, raising this issue and requesting the opportunity for the community to have their say. Yeah. I have 2 constituents, one from Beulah Park and another from Leabrook, who weren't able to be present either last week or this week to make deputations, who have some issues that they would like to raise. So I think as our City of Burnside community engagement policy raises and states, the purpose is to consult with the Burnside community on the decision-making of Council and to enhance and improve the decision-making of Council. This recognises that high-quality community engagement is critical to the successful development of sustainable policies and decisions by Council. And I think this is one of them. I think traffic management is so critical. We've got so many claims and influences on traffic management and road safety that I think this is a policy that should go out for public comment. So I hope you'll support this.
I'm just going to ask Mr. Martin Cooper, our General Manager, to speak in response to the motion that has been put before I seek a second.
Thank you, through the Mayor. Councillor Davey, we had this question before the council meeting this evening about whether the motion could be varied to go out to a public consultation. As you know, we do have a policy on community engagement, and in there, for consistency purposes, we have those policies listed that we go out to because we're required under legislation to do so. This isn't one of those policies that we do have to go out and do that for. In the past, we've generally avoided making policy on the run. Whilst I understand your reference to that, I'm not sure whether it is clear enough. Obviously, it's a council decision. The administration's recommendation would be that should be considered when that policy, the community engagement policy, is reviewed in February 2020. So I'm just a little bit concerned that this might open up some concerns, a can of worms as it were, in terms of picking and choosing those policies that go out for community consultation when we have a policy in place that covers that. At the moment, it's a council policy.
I have a concern too in terms of if the report's to come back by January. We know that community consultation, by the time they actually prepare it and ready to go out, the Christmas vacation period is not a particularly good time of the year. So my only question is the January date, nothing else. Oh, sorry. I was there before, wasn't it? Sorry, I apologise. I must have been looking at the wrong one. Yeah, that's fine. I apologise. I thought I was reading something before and I was looking at January 2020. So, do we have a second? Councillor Jones, you used a second?
I'm happy to second it. The thing I object in it is putting in a 40k speed limit. We haven't even had the community survey yet, and we're saying we're going to have a 40k speed limit in part of our policy. So I definitely think we need to go out to consultation as Councillor Davies suggests.
Councillor, well, keeps changing here. Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. I don't think that's what the policy says. The policy says it gives the policy says that there is the power to do that, but of course to change the speed limit would require community consultation under legislation. Anyhow, we can read these however we want. I've got questions, if I may, and they relate to page 42 again, and it is 6.40 and 6.41. 6.411 and 6.412. Given the B double that got stuck in Alenga Avenue and then tried to do a runner down Glenunga Avenue by leaving his second trailer behind, and I believe killing, it's not funny because there are 4 ancient jacarandas that are now dead or having to be pulled out. This is about mass limits and over-dimensional vehicles on streets. Does this policy give us the capacity then to ban B-doubles from our residential streets? Is that part of this policy? For I have an intention to bring a motion at some stage in the new year about doing just that.
Through the Mayor, regardless of what this policy says, that B-doubles are not meant to be in local streets. So that particular B-double was not meant to go through those streets, and that's not a function of this policy, that's law.
Okay. So I read this and was unnecessarily concerned that you might actually let them come down Bevington Road from time to time. Excellent, thank you very much. You've answered my question.
Councillor Pickett.
Look, all things considered, I feel we should. I don't think it should go out to community consultation. I think traffic management is very much an issue in our residents' minds. However, the policy is largely overarching in my reading of it. There are a few prescriptive things. A couple have come up just now, but I think given our policy, there may be some things that residents might, through their elected members, want to change at a subsequent time, but I would be in favour of the officer's recommendation, so I will vote against it.
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple quick questions, please. On clause 6.3.1 refers to, sorry, here we are, 6.3.1 refers to a prioritisation of ranked factors using engineering judgment. my question is, why isn't there, why don't we rank, why isn't there a factor relating to precursors or near misses, rather than the number one ranked factor is when there's an injury or fatality. In safety leadership, I understand we look for precursors, things that happen before an accident happens or an injury happens, and I want to know if that's in there somewhere, or whether we do have to insert that.
Through the Mayor, there's a little bit of a difference between this and say WHS, where people can report near misses and they can be used for planning purposes.
Yeah.
In relation to vehicular incidents, we don't know about near misses, so we'll know about crashes that result in injuries, and we'll know about crashes that result in property damage, but near misses, while there may be some anecdotal evidence, we don't have formal notification of those.
And the other question I have is, through the Chair, the classification of roads, the maps that were provided in the appendix. In our policy review, do we review the classification of roads, secondary, primary collectors, etc.? And how are these defined?
Through the Mayor, they're reasonably stable. They, I guess, can be reviewed from time to time. It was many years ago now that standard road classifications were introduced by, federal, state and flowed on to local government, so all councils have done that. At the time, assessments were done based on the function and volume of roads, and the function being the most critical, links. So there's a breakdown of obviously local streets, secondary collectors, primary collectors and sub-arterials. They're the roads that are under council's jurisdiction or care and control. As I said, from time to time they're reviewed, but they're pretty stable.
Right. Yeah. And quick last question, speed humps, infrastructure that's antiquated, like speed humps, does this policy help us invest in capital to remove speed humps and implement better traffic control devices? If we have this policy, would that be something is that something you can do as an administration under this policy, or do we need to add something else?
No, certainly through the Mayor. Certainly through the existing policy, we can look at any street, be it the lack of or existing devices that may not be appropriate, and things change and technology changes and techniques change.
Thank you. Great.
Councillor Lemon.
Yes, thank you. I have a question. Following on from the maps, I actually meant to ask this as well. Thank you, Councillor Henschke, for reminding me. Who sets that it is a primary collector road or a secondary collector road? Who sets that as a designation? And B, when were they last set?
Through the Mayor, certainly before my time, I have a feeling it was in the early 80s that they were originally set. There was a study done of the entire city and a report brought to council at the time, and they resolved to support that road hierarchy.
So does that answer my first question, was who sets it? Was council that set it?
Council set it based on recommendations of a consultant at that time.
But it was all done, it wasn't Deputy was involved in this?
It was not Deputy, correct.
Can I have a follow-up to that? So Lununga Avenue is set as a secondary feeder road because it runs between Forest Road and Burnside. You're saying that was set as a secondary feeder road in the 80s by a consultant acting on its own. Is that what you're saying?
Ultimately, it was a decision of council that endorsed the consultant's recommendation.
In the 80s?
I believe it was in the 80s, yes, mid-80s, I think.
So we can change those things if we wish?
Correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Hughes.
I have two questions. In terms of the consultation, when would staff or administration propose to do that? What would the cost be? And I guess what the form of that takes place on a policy, when we consult on a policy, what that looks like?
Through the chair, we would typically not, if we were doing consultation, typically not do it within school holidays. So any consultation wouldn't occur until well after January next year, so into February. In relation to the other part of the question, we've already done internal consultation and consultation with elected members, so it would be, we'll use our usual techniques in relation to social media, possibly, I guess, a notification in the paper. I don't think we would be writing to all people in the district. We'd do it via those broad messaging techniques.
Okay. So it would be similar to what we did with the parking policy. We did send that out to consultation, even though that isn't strictly listed, didn't we? Did we consult on the parking policy, even though that's not listed as one of our... No, we didn't? Okay. No. All right, thank you.
No.
Councillor Cornish.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question, if I can. If going out to community consultation is moved tonight, is there anything in the current policy that you need adopted urgently? Is it administrative thing that needs to be done tonight, or if there's nothing in there that was necessary that you're waiting for, or there's a backlog of stuff for?
Through the chair, no. We can certainly run our business based on the current policy.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have anyone else on the screen, so back to Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm taking on board Mr Cooper's comments. I agree, while this is not one of the designated policies under the Local Government Act, I believe it's really critical to hear what our community has to say on road and traffic management. We all know how problematic it can be, and I think our community engagement policy makes provision for this. There are so many variables in interpretation in this. I think we really need to, we talk about taking a balanced approach to provision of on-street parking. We need to know what our community thinks about this, and they need to give us some guidance and leadership. We are a road authority under the operating under the delegation of the Minister, responsible for the Road Traffic Act, so we have some fairly stringent responsibilities, of which the staff are all aware because they deal with a lot of the issues that present at the coalface, as do we. I just think our community engagement policy makes provision for this being a vital part of information that will be considered during decision-making processes, but of course this won't necessarily determine the outcome. If we went out to community consultation, and it would rightly be after Christmas, we would be given feedback, I'm sure, by our community. The staff would need to assess that and then make recommendations accordingly, and then we would assess those results and make a final decision on a policy. But I really think we would benefit from having the input from our community, so I really hope you'd support this motion. Thank you.
Right, those in favour? Carried. Those against? Apologies, I got... Thank you. Move to, thank you, gentlemen. Office of the Executive Officer, Chief Executive Officer, Councillor Turnbull.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the report be received, that Council adopt the recommendation from the Burnside Retirement Services Incorporated Selection Panel to appoint Ms Roseanne Healy as an independent board member of Burnside Retirement Services Incorporated. Number 3, the independent member appointment is for a period of 3 years, commencing at the close of the BRSI Annual General Meeting, scheduled for Thursday the 28th of November 2019, until the close of 2022 Annual General Meeting. A committee consisting of Mayor Montceau, Councillor Lemon, Councillor Turnbull and chaired by Alan Harvey met on Thursday the 21st and Friday the 22nd of November to interview the applicants for the position of the independent member of the Burnside Retirement Services Incorporated. The successful applicant was the incumbent member, Ms Roseanne Healy. We want to thank all the applicants for applying for this position. And Councillor Lemon, do you want to add anything to it? No? Good, thank you.
Councillor Lemon, you are seconding?
Oh, you've got your thing. Yep.
Yes, thank you. I endorse everything you've said, Councillor Turnbull, and I have nothing further to add.
Right. Also on the screen, I'm going to put the motion. Sorry, Councillor Turnbull, do you wish to add anything else in summarising? Right, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. 13.4. Councillor Davis, appointment of the elected members to the Council Assessment Panel.
Should I move 1, 2 and 4 or should I just move 1 and 2? Prefer to move 1, 2 and 4 if possible.
You can do 4.
1, 2, 4, yep.
So we move that the report we received. Do you want to just read out for the sake of those at home?
I mean, no. If you're at home, you should download the agenda, read it. You'll get a much better background rather than trying to listen to my dreary voice.
Yes, point. You have a point. Dreary.
There's 651 pages there, so.
Sorry, it was Councillor Hughes is on the screen.
Does anyone have a conflict?
So it's Councillor Hughes who is seconding. Do you wish to say anything? Yes.
Does anyone have a conflict?
Okay.
Does anyone have a conflict? Does anyone have a conflict? Anyone? Conflict of interest? Do you currently sit on the CAP?
Those in favour of...
Are you sure that people on the CAP don't currently have a conflict of interest, given that they're actually raising their remuneration?
We're looking at 13.4. How can we pass through when there's blank names?
No, we're not passing through. It's 1, 2 and 4.
them around in the order on the screen.
Oh, okay.
So numbers 1, 2 and 3 are...
I'd suggest that anyone on the currently sitting on the DAP has a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Just say
Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I wish to declare a conflict of interest as a member of the CAP in relation to item 3.
And you're going to leave the room?
But I can nominate afterwards.
I think this is actually worth explaining for those who are at home, but you're going to say that, Councillor Henschke.
And I choose to leave.
Thank you. It won't be long. It's outrageous. Outrageous, Council. 25%. What is this world coming to?
Did we get a second? Councillor Hughes seconded. So nobody wishes to speak on this. We'll put the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Councillor Henschke can now return, and I'm calling for nominations. So I'm calling for nominations for the CAP. Yeah. I'm not going to close them until, but I just might as well ask if there's anyone else while we're waiting.
Well, I nominate Councillor Lemon.
Okay, Councillor Davis has nominated Councillor Lemon. Does Councillor Lemon accept? Right. We have one nomination has come, just while you were just as you were coming back into the room, and that is from Councillor Lemon. Councillor Dawes. Right, is nominating Councillor Henschke. You accept the nomination, Councillor Henschke?
Yes, I accept.
Thank you. Are there any further nominations? No further nominations, then we do have a voting procedure that we have to go through. Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Through the Mayor, if I could just remind elected members of the process for determining a council appointment is as follows. So each appointment is by way of resolution of council confirming the results of an election and is for the term, the method of voting is by secret ballot. The nominations will be called for all the positions to be filled, which has already happened. The nominees will be given an opportunity to provide a brief explanation, a maximum of 5 minutes, as to why they are nominating and the skills, qualifications and experience they bring to the position. In the event of 2 candidates being nominated, as there is for this occasion, the method of voting will be first past the majority vote. In the event of a tie, the matter is decided by drawing of lots, the candidate first drawn being the candidate excluded. The ballot papers from each secret ballot will be returned to the administration for filing. During all secret ballots, all elected members can remain in the chamber and be part of the secret ballot process. The process is to determine an indicative vote and does not attract the application of the conflict of interest provisions. Where the appointment to a committee, board or CAP will result in the appointee receiving an allowance, the conflict of interest provisions operate to require the council member who is nominated by the motion to declare their interest and to remove themselves from the decision-making process as required in accordance with Section 74(2) and 4 of the Local Government Act 1999. The administration will perform the following procedures. A separate tally sheet will be kept for each vote undertaken and will be signed by the CEO. Each elected member will be handed a voting paper for each round of voting. Tallying of votes will commence once confirmation of the numbers of voting papers equalling the number of elected members within the chamber at the time. All voting materials, including the ballot papers and tally sheets, will be retained for a period of 12 months and then discarded. All voting this evening is for one appointee only, but for the CAP and East Waste, a bit later on, there is a potential for a deputy member. In these circumstances, we're recommending that there is a separate voting process for the board panel member and then the deputy vacancy. A member can apply to be a candidate in either or both. If a member is not successful at becoming the board panel member, they can nominate to become the deputy. Same rules of voting will apply. If a member has already given a 5-minute speech for the board panel member position, they will not be required to do so for the deputy vacancy. Council's Governance Officer, Wendy Matthews, will sit next to the Acting CEO and will oversee the voting and drawing of the names to ensure procedural fairness. The Governance Officer will record the names and ensure that all votes are read and counted. In the event of a tie, as I mentioned earlier, the Governance Officer will write the names, fold the paper, put them in the counting container, and the Acting CEO will draw the name from the container. Thank you.
And just to be consistent for all of voting tonight, I will go alphabetically in relation to those who speak. So hence it will be Councillor Henschke who speaks first, followed by Councillor Lemon, and I'll follow that same procedure for all other voting tonight. So Councillor Henschke, it's up to you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, you have up to 5 minutes.
All right, great, okay, good. All right, thank you very much for the nomination, Councillor Dawes. Look, I've been on the council assessment panel as an independent elected member for 12 months now. It's my first 12 months. I do enjoy representing the residents and helping them. Many residents do attend the council assessment panel meetings to put their submissions in. There's usually a lot of angst in the community when this happens. I know I have to listen very carefully to understand the impact on their amenity. I've been in their shoes. I understand what it feels like. I'm also an engineer. I understand plans, so I can assess the impact of their amenity objectively as well. And I work and listen very closely to my other council assessment panel members, and I respect the work by the planners in our administration that work very hard to objectively assess the impacts on residents. We are facing greater infill development. We are facing population growth, maybe 10,000 people in the next 10 years in the city of Burnside. We're going to have some big challenges. But I have confidence that this administration and the Council Assessment Panel will follow the development plans, which will become the code in July 2020. And I have faith that the government will do the right thing with the code, even though a lot of community are upset at the moment with the threat to character, to contributory items. And I do hope to continue my service on the CAP, if you support that, and continue that for another 12 months. Thank you all, and I do hope you continue to support me. Thank you.
Councillor Lemon.
Thank you. When I was first elected to council in 2010 and we had our first planning day, I brought this along. This is the first iteration of the 30-year plan for Greater Adelaide. And I remember saying at that time, this is probably the most significant document that we're going to have to deal with, because this was the beginning of infill, and it was the beginning of the government's push to have infill within inner city suburbs. As a result of my interest in that, I served on DAP every other year for 8 years, 7 years, and stepped away from it when the new planning code was starting to be mooted, because I started making submissions on that and felt that under the immediate past government, I was set up to be attacked by being a member of what was then DAP and going for every anomaly that was being pushed this way to Burnside. So I've actually been involved with the new planning code right from when it was first mooted, right from when it started with this document, which is now in its second iteration. So what I will promise you is this. I know the current planning code under which we operate and will be operating until the 30th of June next year. And next year will be a pivotal year, because as we know, those of us that went to the last session on the new code, there's 3,000 pages with lots of mistakes in them. So what I can promise you is this. I will read those 3,000 pages. I will fight shamelessly, tenaciously, loudly, fiercely for the best interests of this city. I will make the deputations not to have 200 square metre blocks. I will make the deputations to do things like the anomaly between the current iteration of this and the Environment Minister's Greening Adelaide plan, which is looking to increase the tree canopy. I will join those dots and fight for Burnside. That's what I will do for the next 12 months if you elect me to CAP. I will absolutely be completely committed to making sure that it is the very best outcome for every one of our wards and for every one of our residents. Other neighbouring councils have actually got some concessions already. So there's height restrictions already apparent in Campbelltown. I will investigate how that happened. I will use the same sorts of methodologies. I will be shameless in advocating for this city and advocating for its amenity. And in saying that, I'm not saying that all development is bad, but what I'm saying is, in a lot of ways, We need to keep the feel of our neighbourhoods. We need to keep our green leafy suburbs. We need to keep the ambience. And if you like, if I can quote the castle as I finish, we need to keep the vibe. I will work very hard for that, if you support me.
All right, you please distribute the ballot papers, thank you. Remind you all to only put one name on your piece of paper.
Okay, thank you all and thank you, Helen. I'll now ask Wendy to count and check that there's 13 pieces of paper here. Confirming there's 13, I'll now read out each one, and a reminder that as there is only 2 candidates, the candidate with the most votes will move into Council's recommendation. There cannot be a tie. First one is Councillor Lemon. Second one is Councillor Henschke. Vote for Councillor Lemon. Vote for Councillor Henschke. Vote for Councillor Henschke. Vote for Councillor Henschke. Vote for Councillor Lemon. 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 Vote for Councillor Lemon, and the last one, vote for Councillor Henschke. So we have 8 votes for Councillor Lemon and 5 votes for Councillor Henschke. So Councillor Lemon moves into the first name into the proposed motion. We're not...
Hold on, we've got to... Because there's...
Would suggest that we now do a fresh round of voting for the deputy position, and we'll go through that process as well.
So I've called for nominations for deputy for the CAP. Councillor Henschke, are you willing to be the deputy?
Yes, I do.
Okay, anyone else willing to be? Anyone else wish to stand as the deputy? Councillor Davis, you wish to move that Councillor Lemon is appointed as the member and Councillor Henschke as a deputy member to the Councillor Assessment Panel for the term of 1 year, commencing on January 1st, 2020 and concluding December 31st, 2020. And seconded by?
I've pressed my button.
They need to declare conflict.
Ah, sorry, yes. All right.
Jesus, she's...
And you need to say it first. Councillor Davey.
So I'm happy to second that motion. Did Councillor Davis?
Yes, I think Councillor Davis did move it.
Yes, I'm seconding it.
Those against, carried. Now we move to 13.5, appointment of delegates to the audit, or delegates for the audit committee. And for the audit committee, I believe we only need one. No deputy, is that correct? So I will call for nominations now for, no, wait a minute. Motion for the first, yes. Motions for 1 and 2. No, it's just the first one, isn't it?
So you want to do
Yeah, report be received.
this one?
And
Right.
number 2.
Yes.
Yeah. So need someone to move. Councillor Davey, you're moving?
That council undertakes secret ballot. Oh. So this is for. Yes, yes, I move in accordance with 1 and 2, thank you.
So it's for all of them?
Yes, for all of them. Yeah. And then we go to
And then we move to the individual places?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, those against? So this is the first one is East. The first one is for East Waste. Councillor Davey, you wishing to? Your name's on the screen.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. So we're now nominating people for positions.
I'll nominate councillor Davis.
Right.
I'll accept.
Will you accept the nomination, Councillor Davis? Right. Is there anyone else who wishes to nominate for the Board of East Waste?
I'll nominate Councillor Carbone.
Right. Councillor Carbone has been nominated. Do you accept that nomination, Councillor Carbone? Those against? Sorry, not those against. Are there any further nominations? Apologies. Any further nominations? No further nominations? Right, nominations are closed and there's no monetary thing, so, okay. So they have, Carbone is first, I believe. Councillor Carbone, if we're following the alphabetical.
Yes, thank you, Worship, and please vote for me for the following reasons. So, number 1, I actually nominated last time for this, so I'm hoping second time lucky. I've been in business all of my working life, and East Waste, of course, is a private enterprise. It is a business. So I've been in one way, shape or form or another in a senior role in a private sector capacity for almost 20 years. Education-wise, degree in economics, masters in business. I come from a sales marketing background, and this is exactly the skill set that I like to bring to the board to promote the cause that East Waste stands for and the new initiatives that we like to roll out over the next 12 months. I have a passion for rubbish. It was one of my key election platforms 12 months ago, and I'm totally committed to improving this service and looking for new initiatives and working towards improvements in rubbish collection and sorting. I have, over the last 12 months, I have been for a tour of the depot. I've spoken to the general manager. I've had meetings with their operation manager as well. So I've got to know East Waste on a private, intimate level. And I tell you what, you'll love this bit. I have even been on a what do you call it? A tour of the truck itself. So one morning, I caught up with East Waste at their depot and went for a drive around for a couple of hours. So I got to see firsthand how it all unfolds every morning. So from the time it collects to the time it's unloaded at the other end. So I hope you can vote for me. It is a business. I come from a business background. Qualifications obviously are there, and my sales and marketing background again is what I will bring to the board. So that's it, Your Worship. That's my elevator pitch. Please vote for me.
Councillor Davis.
Thank you. Your Worship and councillors, I'd like to put myself forward for this position. Since coming on council, waste has been one of my primary focuses, and I looked at over the first term and in this term, I've continually looked at how we can improve waste system, and I think that Grant has done an excellent job whilst he's been there. But now I can see a number of reforms that I'd like to introduce, and I think that there is a much better way that we can do we can do rubbish in our city. It is one of our fundamental core services, roads, rates and rubbish, and it is one of the pillars of what council does. Now, it contributes to about $2.7 million of our cost, and a large part of that cost and a large part of that inefficiency comes from, in my view, the misunderstanding of the 3-bin system, and also other ways in which households can dispose of rubbish in better ways rather than putting it into their red bin and perhaps calling for hard rubbish collection or other ways. So there are three main focuses that I'd like to, or three main objectives I'd like to achieve. The first is I'd like to reduce the amount of soft plastics and bottle caps and things which can't be recycled with normal hard plastics that go into our recycling bin. We actually had one of the ladies who gave a deputation. I've met with her. She's a dentist. And she goes through that excellent process of splitting up the different types of plastics, and the supermarkets are pushing it now. But her major concern and difficulty was that she couldn't actually drop them off anywhere. She didn't have deposit locations within Burnside or other city centres, or she even found it difficult at supermarkets to go ahead and do the right thing and sort out that material in terms of recyclables. And for me, that would be a core tenet, is to improve the amount of deposit collection locations to reduce the amount of inefficiency in recycling. The second thing I'd like to look at is how we do hard rubbish. And I know some of you have probably heard me bang on about the merits of looking at a green shed style concept that Canberra has done so well. Over a weekend in Canberra, they have about 3,000 people who go through their green shed. And essentially it's a salvage and save location where we can divert hard waste from going to landfill and instead recycle it and reuse it. It's particularly useful in terms of Burnside, where we have our heritage tiles, things like that, where if you scrape off tiles off a wall or things like that, and that was pertinent to the age, rather than just putting that into the bin and rather than that going to landfill, those particular things can actually be reused. And in this example that I went and visited in Canberra, they had these bins of different types of tiles, different types of doors. They had basic furniture, and I think many of you have heard, we used to be a bit of a destination to come and collect good furniture. And at the moment, my understanding is the majority of that furniture is actually burnt for fuel, and we're missing out on a huge opportunity there to not only reduce the amount that goes to landfill, but also reduce the impact of creating new things, new products that could otherwise be used and they're perfectly useful. And I think that is a missed opportunity that came with that hard rubbish change that I was actually an advocate for, and it saved council many hundreds of thousands of dollars. But one of the core tenets in that was that we reuse and recycle that stuff, and that we talk to the salvos, and I think we can do that better. My third point, and I've banged on about this for the last year, is that debate that we did with the red bin, green bin situation. In my view, we should look at swapping the collection rates of the red bin and the green bin. And to do that, what I would suggest is to run a trial in a very small location, perhaps a couple of streets, educate those residents properly, and see how it goes. Because in the last debate, the minister actually came out and said there will be no change, and essentially a lot of people were saying, but my rubbish is going to get smelly, things are going to rot in there. But what the message that wasn't communicated at that time was there shouldn't be really anything smelly in your red bin. It should be going into your organics. And that is the biggest cost that this council faces out of that 2.7 million. I think that's perhaps not the biggest cost, but the best way that we can reduce that $2.7 million figure. And what I'd like to do is run a trial to prove to the community that it's possible, and then bring the community with you. And I believe that I have the leadership skills to bring a member of my community. I propose that we do it in someplace in my ward. I've got an idea in mind, and that's something that I can advocate for and push in the East Waste board. It needs to have that leadership. And we'll also be considering other duties that East Waste can consider in future later tonight. And I think that as your representative on East Waste, that I would have the ability to drive that leadership and to communicate effectively with residents and really drive and trying to reduce our costs in landfill so that we can put it to better use. I seek your support tonight.
Right, if we can have the ballot papers, thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Confirming there's 13 blue bits of paper. Same as before, first past the post will be moving into the council motion. First vote for Councillor Davis. Vote for Councillor Carbone. Vote for Councillor Carbone. Vote for Councillor Carbone. Vote for Councillor Davis. Vote for Councillor Carbone. Vote for Councillor Carbone. Vote for Councillor Davis. Vote for Councillor Davis. Vote for Councillor Davis. Vote for Councillor Carbone. Vote for Councillor Davis. And finally, vote for Councillor Carbone.
Very close.
If I'm correct, it's 7 votes for Councillor Carbone and 6 votes for Councillor Davis. And therefore, Councillor Carbone moves into the motion as it stands. I'm noticing a distinct lack of drawings on these nominations this time. I was very disappointed.
Give me less chance. First of all, are there any nominations for deputy for East Waste? Councillor Davis, do you wish to be a deputy? No? Sorry, Councillor Hubel, do you wish to accept that nomination, Councillor Hubel?
I accept that nomination.
Right, Councillor Hubel accepts the nomination. Are there any other nominations? No further nominations? Then I declare Councillor Hubel as the deputy into the motion. So now we need someone to move the motion. Councillor Piggott, happy to move. Seconded by Councillor Turnbull. Those in favour? Sorry. Don't need to. Okay. So those in favour, those against. So Councillor Carbone and Councillor Hubel are representatives for East Waste. And I'd like to take this opportunity to formally thank Councillor Piggott for 9 years of service. I did respond via email and congratulated him on the fact that he had particularly dealt with some very difficult times in the early stages of East Waste 9 years ago when we inherited a massive debt. And I do congratulate him on the amazing service that and perseverance that he has fulfilled over the last 9 years. So I'd like that recorded formally as a thank you to him. 9 years is a long time to be on one organisation. So thank you. I think it beats anyone else, except for Councillor Cornish, who's still with Eastern Health after 9. So thank you for that.
So do you want to now just do the Eastern Health Authority? Just get that one.
Yes, we can do that one. Okay. So Eastern Health Authority, speaking of which, I'm looking for where it is on the screen there. Yeah, okay. So that Councillor Cornish and Group Manager Magnus Heinrich continue their appointments on Eastern Health Board, and they'll continue with those General Manager, and will continue their appointments for the current term of council in line with resolution that was made last year in 2018. Sorry, it is the position. So I used the name the current person, but it is the position in terms of the staff member, but in terms of the councillor, it is the name of the person, definitely. Okay. So, do we have to fill anything in there? We don't. No, just need to. Councillor Davey, you'd like to move it? Councillor Dawes is seconding. Thank you. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. The Audit Committee. So could I call for, don't have to put anything through there? No, just nominations for the Audit Committee. Councillor Lemon?
Are we doing our buttons or not?
Sorry?
Are we doing buttons?
Sorry, it is Councillor Davey. Apologies, Councillor Davey. You had your name on the screen.
Thank you. I wish to nominate Councillor Piggott.
Thank you. Councillor Piggott, do you accept the nomination? I do. Councillor Carbone.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Dawes.
Councillor Dawes, do you accept the nomination?
No, I won't.
You don't wish to? No. Right. Are there any further nominations?
Yes.
Councillor Dawes, you wish to nominate someone else?
Councillor Henschke.
Councillor Henschke, okay. Councillor Henschke, do you accept the nomination?
I accept.
Thank you. Are there any... Councillor Cornish.
I nominate Councillor Davis.
Councillor Davis, do you wish to accept?
This is for audit.
Audit Committee? No, okay. Thank you. Are there any further nominations then? Councillor Dawes, your name is on the screen.
Yes, I just wanted to be sure here. Are we also going to elect a proxy delegate? Because I noticed that on page 115 it mentioned we could.
It's not what's up there just now, so we would have to do that.
On page 115 of the agenda papers.
I'd like... Have a page number there, Councillor Dawes? 115? 3.2. 3.2.
Oh, yeah, that was.
It is 3.2.
Yeah, you can do it, but you would have to do it through motion of council.
Right, so apparently we can do it. It's page
115.
115. It is possible to do that, but it would require an amendment to the motion.
There's no motion yet.
Oh, there's no motion yet.
So it would require a motion to be
Included?
included,
Right.
that you do have a proxy member.
Okay.
You don't have to.
Yes, you've been Councillor Jones has been a proxy when I was unavailable prior to you taking the role. Yes, for Audit Committee.
I would suggest go through.
You happy with the suggestion from the Acting CEO? Councillor Davis? Sorry, I've got no one on the screen who wishes to speak here. Are you happy with we go ahead and do the voting on this one, and then if somebody wishes to move for a proxy to be added, that we do that after this? Does that meet with your approval? Okay. Okay. Thank you. So we've got our nominations. Now we need our ballot papers. Need 5 minutes to speak. Apologies for that.
So
And we've got
Lillian first and then
Henschke followed by Piggott.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Well, thank you all. Okay. Please vote for me. I have actually sought feedback for my self-development on this audit committee. I sought feedback from 2 audit committee members, the presiding member, David Powell, who was very happy for me to say that he welcomes me back if I'm elected. He says that my broad questioning is very welcome. He said, this shows that I do thinking outside the scope of papers. And he said, I've early on brought in very strong project management questions, which is very important for our council, seeing we have a reasonably sized capital management plan. I also spoke to Stephen Coates, auditor from Queensland, and he similarly was very pleased with my questioning. He encouraged me to even further develop myself further, and I do have personal development goals to add to my MBA, and I will be planning to do an AICD company directors course shortly. I'm also recently appointed onto a not-for-profit board a not-for-profit board called Holiday Explorers. So I do have the skills, experience in audit. As you know, last time I spoke about my role in leading the project management office at BHP Olympic Dam and $300 million capital portfolio, and I was heavily involved in deep dives and internal audit matters and governance and financial matters of that capital portfolio. One of the first things I did when I started with the Audit Committee and on this council was speak about capital savings, and the community responded to my remarks in the advertiser and the messenger regarding capital savings. And I know the administration works very hard at achieving capital savings and efficiencies. We've got a great administration, an opportunity for amazing value add with our employees and this great city of Burnside as we go forward with the 30-year plan. We have more and more challenges, more costs, as we already have heard today about the range of services. So please vote for me. I'll be very happy to serve you and the residents and ratepayers of the City of Burnside for another year. Thank you.
Councillor Pickett.
Thanks, Lillian. Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, look, I'm happy to nominate for this. I think it is an important year going forward for the finances, particularly of the City of Burnside. We've had a relatively flat year, I think, in regard to it being an issue, but it will rise back up again. And I think the Audit Committee is crucial, and I do feel that I'm a good person to have on it on behalf of Council. My history is as a chartered accountant. I was a former auditor, although I don't admit it much. Certainly didn't help in picking up women, I can tell you.
Trying hard.
Well, there was some reason it wasn't working anyway. Sorry, I promised to bring less frivolity to the Audit Committee if I am elected. Look, yeah, I'm a financial person. You've seen how I operate in the chamber. My day job at the showground has me, I'm chair of the Work Health and Safety Committee. I oversee risk management, I oversee asset management plans, and from that point of view, I am dealing with a lot of the stuff, certainly on a smaller scale, that the council needs to deal with. I bring a broad knowledge of the finances. I've got quite close knowledges now for various reasons on a couple of the subsidiaries, which is important. You have seen, I think, that I do the work. I do read the reports, I do ask the questions, and I do have a financial bias. So from that point of view, I feel that I am an ideal person to be on Audit Committee. I've been on Audit Committee off and on through my entire time, and generally not on it because I went off and did other things. I think I did operate pretty well when I was there, and I am confident that I would operate pretty well if I was there again. I'm very keen to work on behalf of the Council on the Audit Committee, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Confirming there are 13. I would say they were violet, paper to paper. First vote for Councillor Henschke. Second vote for Councillor Henschke. Third vote for Councillor Henschke. Fourth vote for Councillor Henschke. Vote for Councillor Henschke. Vote for Councillor Piggott. Vote for Councillor Henschke. Vote for Councillor Piggott. Vote for Councillor Piggott. Vote for Councillor Henschke. Vote for Councillor Henschke with a wine glass and a balloon. Thank you.
Someone is artistic.
Vote for Councillor Piggott and vote for Councillor Piggott, which makes... that makes Councillor Henschke with 8 votes, Councillor Piggott with 5 votes. Therefore, Councillor Henschke moves into the motion. Now will be your opportunity to decide whether you have a proxy or not.
So I'm looking for a motion in relation to, or adding, we add to that one? Yes, adding to that as point 2 that councillor so-and-so be appointed as a proxy member.
I would suggest first of all, that someone moves that we have a proxy member, and then...
Yeah, I was going to say we need that
because
first.
if it's not supported, then we'll refer back to the...
Okay, but do we have to move that first? No. No, okay. So I'm seeking someone, Councillor Jones, apparently.
Yes. I'm happy to move that we should have a proxy. And I think my rationale for this is we've just voted for East Waste. We have a person and we have a deputy. And I think there's another one we've just voted for as a deputy, which is the CAP. On the Audit Committee, we currently have the Mayor and 2 elected members. If any one of those 3 is not there, then the proxy will step in, and then we've got the full range of elected member opinions. So I think it's a good idea to have a proxy, and I'm happy to move the motion.
Councillor Dawes, you wishing to second that?
I'll second that. Thank you.
Anything else you wish to say? No. Don't have anyone on the screen, so... Councillor Davey, I missed you again.
Are we making nominations for proxy?
No, first of all, we're deciding whether we are going to have a proxy.
Oh, right.
Those in favour of having a proxy? Those against? Carried.
I wish to nominate Councillor Piggott as proxy.
Do you accept that nomination? Are there any other nominations? Since there are no other nominations, well, Councillor Davey, you will move that Councillor Piggott is the proxy, and that can be inserted into number 2?
Number 2, and then they will have to leave. They'll have to declare a conflict, and then we'll have to leave.
We'll have to leave, okay. Both of them.
Oh, no, it's independent.
It's only the independents have got money, yeah. So, no, it's not required, they're okay, they have to stay, yeah. Right, Councillor Davey, your name's on the screen. You're moving...
So I'm moving
this,
that we...
all 5 of those points?
Yes.
Okay. And seconded by? Looking for a name. Councillor Hughes?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, Councillor Hughes is seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. What I'm going to suggest, I know it's 9 o'clock, but can I suggest that we just do the revised asset management plans post-consultation, and then we have the break, because that will allow some of the staff to go home. For much of what follows some of that is confidential anyway. So if that meets with the approval of the council, I'd like us to do that. You also move, all right, or just need an indication, those who support that idea. Can you put your hands in the air? Yeah? Okay, good. All right, so we will move on to the revised asset management plans, and it was Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that the report be received, and 2, that Council approve the revised asset management plans following the recent community consultation period and consideration by the Audit Committee. Briefly, the Audit Committee considered this asset management plan, and the feedback from the external auditors was regarding their high quality presentation, contemporary approach to the asset management plans. We have an administration that's delivering for the City of Burnside a new benchmark, and I think we should all be very proud that we have this capability in the organisation. I do hope we have more money to spend in the future, because there are some spikes, and they've tried to spread out those pressures, cost pressures. The uniqueness of this plan in the feedback is that it strongly connects with the community, and not just on technical data, technical condition assessments, for example. We are listening to the community in this plan, and we can see that there is always room for improvement. Footpaths, there is room there, and even our community facilities. If we study the feedback we got about the usage of our facilities, data's presented there is quite interesting. On page 359, I would have, thought the George Bolton Swim Centre would be more popular than the Regal Theatre, but that's the data, and we can inquire further into it. And it's only for half a year, exactly. So there's lots of there's more information we can gather there. So, without further ado, I'll hand it over for debate.
I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Jones, you got in first.
I will second. I don't want to say anything other than vote for it.
Councillor Cornish.
I'd just like to thank you for a tonload of work. I concur with the external auditors that these were absolutely amazing. They were very easy for me to read as well, which was just even better, because managing the assets can be a very boring thing to read, but it was quite interesting, and some of the information very, very useful, I think, for future motions that are going to have to come to this chamber. So thank you for all the hard work, everyone in the team. So thank you.
Councillor Lemon.
And I'd like to build upon that. I actually thought the original asset management plan was a pretty slick piece of work that probably couldn't be improved upon, and here we are with it improved upon, so thank you very much.
Councillor Dawes.
Oh, thank you. Look, I just, like the accessibility to buildings, you must have been very pleased with that, Michelle. Like, go up by 65%. Either we were hopeless in 2016, or we put a lot of special effort into that. But I just want to congratulate you on that. It's clause 34.2 on page 353. That's an outstanding result.
I'd just like to reinforce everything that's been said. It certainly came through very clearly in the Audit Committee, the support for these plans. And when I think those of us who were here 9 years ago, we reflect back on those same said plans, they needed a lot of work. And some didn't even exist. So I think congratulations particularly to you and your team, Ms Kennedy, for all the work that you have done in putting these plans together, consolidating the feedback that came from the community, and then acting on that and bringing to us a very, very an excellent document. So thank you. Now I'll seek a support for this. Sorry, do you wish to speak again, Councillor Henschke?
No, thank you.
Okay, I'll put the motion then. Those in favour? Those against? I'm calling for someone who'd like to suggest a 10-minute break. Councillor Dawes, 10-minute break, and Councillor Jones has seconded. So we'll have a 10-minute break now and resume in 9:16. Thank you. Those in favour? Those against? Carry. Right, it's 9:16, so can we resume our places, please? And I'll check if we have a quorum. No, you don't. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's all we've got sitting at the moment. 2, 3. Councillor Carbone, I just need you back in your seat and then we can start. No.
I do have a question. On page 475, could you please explain, could somebody please explain to me why the City of Burnside had 3.95 water compared with all the others, which is 6.3% of the total? And yet we all pay a third towards Era Water. I don't know if anyone can answer it. Why did that happen?
Through your worship, they're still commissioning the system. So it's not a full supply and the contract's actually not been signed for the supply of water. They're still commissioning the system, therefore it's not available yet at Burnside Reserves.
What's commissioning the system mean? Pardon me?
Making sure it works.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, I've got Councillor Hinchley first and then
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a question about the ERA Water Strategic Plans paper that was written by Mr. Jenkins, Dr. Jenkins. My question is, why is ERA Water inquiring into their strategic, it seems like divestment plans when the project hasn't been, the benefits of the project haven't been fully realised and the independent peer review report hasn't been finalised?
There's been apologies, there's been so many discussions on this one. I'm just trying to remember what's actually come through council and what's been discussed outside. This was actually considered by council not at the last meeting but the meeting before, in which Era Water Board requested all councils to give them the authority to look at all strategic options, including divestment, as a potential option. So this council's already considered that and resolved for them to do so. So they're doing it under council direction.
Councillor Pickett, you don't wish to speak anymore? Okay. So we did have a mover. Councillor, are you happy for me to put this now? Does you wish to speak, Councillor Cornish? Councillor Dawes, you're preempting here? Okay. All right, those in favour, please raise your hands. Those against? Carry. Next one is Brown Hill Creek Stormwater Board. Is there anyone who wishes to ask to move this first?
Moving it.
Councillor Cornish is moving. Councillor Piggott, no, Councillor Lemon got the name in first. So Councillor Lemon, you're seconding. Anyone wish to ask any questions or make a comment? All right, so I will put the motion then if you're happy with that, Councillor Cornish. Those in favour? Those against? Carried. Mayor's report, someone like to move that? Be accepted? Councillor, I haven't got any names on the screen. got lots of hands in the air, but Councillor Hubel, you're in first. You're moving it. And Councillor Cornish is seconding. All those in favour? Carried. Reports of members and delegates and working parties are all on the screen and all recorded in the minutes. We don't need a motion on that one though, do we? Okay. We now move to the section of, that is the confidential matters. So we need to have someone to move a motion to go into confidence. Councillor Piggott, thank you.
I'm happy
You're
to.
moving.
Yes.
I need a seconder. Councillor Cornish.
He's not an employee here. I think it's appropriate.
Probably technically, I don't know.
Technically, I mean, sorry.
It's up to council, but
I just found out you do not have to be an employee. It is entirely up to council. Mr. Cooper has just informed me.
For what?
no, you need to put it in the motion.
Yes. Yes. No, we haven't voted on it. We have moved it, but yeah.
I'm happy to do with the exception of the CEO elect.
I'm happy to accept that. Is the seconder willing to accept that?
Yep. I think it should. No, that's I'm good with that.
Sorry, you were the mover, councillor. Sorry.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
It's an amendment.
All right. So it's an amendment. Hence, who wishes? Councillor Davis, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I think it's totally inappropriate that, like, I understand the mentality, but I don't think that on that basis alone, it's a matter for council that we've been briefed on, that we have the confidential information available to us. There's, legal advice and all that kind of stuff that's in the report, and the fact that we'll discuss it. I understand that it'll become the new CEO's problem, but I don't think it's appropriate that we just willy-nilly bring people who aren't currently employed under the City of Burnside Council ever, or we're not engaging as lawyers into a confidential session or a motion to discuss something. I just don't think it's appropriate until the start date. You really shouldn't be releasing confidential information, especially privileged advice, to somebody outside the organisation. You shouldn't be releasing privileged advice to people outside the organisation who aren't currently members. So I don't think you should support this.
Councillor Davey?
I feel the same, thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I think, while I understand he's keen to hear it, for all those... For all, excuse me, I'm speaking. For all those reasons, excuse me, for all the, particularly the legal advice and the long lead-up that we've had and the many deliberations we've had, I think it's quite reasonable that, for his protection too, that he doesn't stay. I would prefer to see that.
Yep, okay. You're very welcome to sit in the elected members' room, otherwise I can give you my tag. Look, take this and you can go into my office, into the mayor's parlour.
You can also go on. It's up there.
Sorry?
You can, if he doesn't want to stay, he doesn't have to as well.
Oh, of course, if you don't wish to stay, you may also leave. Okay, thank you. Right, so we're going back to, no. It's on foot, okay, so we need to vote on this. Yes, Councillor Lemon, you wish to speak?
Yeah, I'll speak to it. I concur with Councillor Davis and Councillor Davey in this instance, and this is going to be an issue no matter what, whichever way we go down, and I don't want a matter of process to take us on a derailed, legal avenue that we might not have to if we weren't supposed to have this. And it can't be the CEO-elect because he's not voted into the position. It'd have to be the actual person himself. And as the current CEO of the City of Wales sitting in this building. So I actually am concerned that this is an important thing that's been going on for many, many years, and I don't want to derail it with a legal, technicality.
Councillor Lemon.
I'll sum up. I didn't speak the first time.
I would like to hear what Councillor Lemon has to say, so I would like to move that she's allowed to speak again.
Seek leave.
Seek leave of the meeting.
Okay, seek leave.
Can I get an indication of those who are in favour of letting Councillor Lemon speak? All right, so Councillor Lemon, you have the right to speak. Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you all. I agree with what you're saying. I can see where you're coming from, and you're coming from an abundance of caution. But I thought that it would be useful. This person has not had access to all these documents that we've had. So in actual fact, all he's observing is us and how we're dealing with this. And I think that you're quite right. This is going to be his problem in a matter of weeks, not months, really. And I think it would have been useful for him to see how we, as a group of people, agree and disagree. I just think that that would have given him some really good background on what this is going on. And I feel that we have voted for him. In fact, we voted for him on the 26th of October. He has been voted for. So I take your point. I think you're being very proper, and I don't disagree with your properness, but I also feel that there was a lot to be gained for having him in the room with us.
Those in favour of the amendment, those, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those against? It was lost, yes. Councillor Hughes, you wish to speak on this?
No, I don't wish to speak to. I think the motion should be put.
Those against? Motion, I'm looking for somebody to put. Those against? Carried.